Imagine, child, that you are only 12 years old, and you live in a cozy peasant settlement somewhere in the south of Bulgaria, in the year of our Lord 1550. A grey mist, like a shroud of dead souls, spreads across the valley while you walk behind your father, helping him herd the sheep in the wet meadows. The animals' necks jingle with copper bells, weaving a melody of peace that has accompanied you since childhood. At this time, your mother, a kind and hardworking woman, is preparing your morning meal, still warm bread and fresh goat's milk, which tastes like childhood itself, like peace, like everything you once knew and loved. But suddenly you hear something that changes your world forever. The groan of hooves on the stone pavement is like thunder over a temple. Your father's face suddenly turns pale as a sheet. Your mother throws the clay jug in horror, and it shatters into pieces, just as your former world will soon shatter. For everyone in the village knew, when this sound is heard, the collectors of yasir, the men of the Ottoman Padishah, are coming. You, like a shadow, hide behind a wooden cart and watch as their horsemen in colorful robes dismount. Their clothes are luxurious, as if at a royal banquet, and not tarnished by a single speck of dust after a long journey. In their hands are scrolls, lists, their gazes, firm, indifferent, like those of merchants who evaluate livestock before trading. One of them stretches out his fingers at you. Your mother falls to her knees, cries out, begs in words they cannot understand. Your father is silent, because he knows, resistance means death for all. You are torn from your parents' arms, with promises of service to the great ruler, of glory, of honor. But when the cart moves away, far from everything familiar, only the moans and sobs of your mother reach your ears, gradually fading into the fog. You know, you will never see her again. Thus begins your new life, not as a free youth, but as a harem servant in the most powerful state in the world. And the horrors that lurk behind the walls of the Sultan's palace will make you remember with mournful longing the quiet days among the flocks in the damp valleys, where the world was still simple, and the soul was whole. The road to the heart of the Ottoman Empire was long and merciless. The cart on which you were taken from your native village soon stopped. You, along with dozens of other boys, were driven out of it like cattle and set off on foot, through forests, wastelands, mountains and valleys. It was not a journey, but a test of body, spirit and will. The days merged into one, you ate dry crumbs, drank from dirty streams, slept under the open sky or in huts that did not hold back either the wind or the cold. And if someone fell, from fatigue, illness or despair, they left him lying there. No one looked back. Then you understood for the first time, in this empire, even before the walls of Constantinople, weakness is death. And survival is granted only to the strong, cunning or those who learn to be invisible. Next to you walked a boy a few years older, from a Greek settlement by the sea. His name was Nikos. He whispered that soon his name would be banned. On the night of the third day of the journey, he tried to escape, but the guard caught him a mile from the camp. In the morning he was dragged back, and then, beaten in front of everyone. With rods, belts, feet. His screams tore the air like the thunder of a spring storm. You closed your eyes, but the sound stayed with you forever. And the lesson too: escape is impossible, resistance is futile. You learned to walk quietly, breathe carefully, not look up when the guard looked for a new victim. And when one morning the lineup was incomplete, and a gap appeared in the ranks, you did not ask where the boy had disappeared, because you already knew. When at last the outlines of the majestic Constantinople appeared before your eyes, and you saw their high spires, the majestic dome of St. Sophia, the palace, like a fortress from dreams that became a nightmare, your soul was filled not with delight, but with a harsh emptiness. For that city, which seemed like a dream, became your prison wall. And behind those walls awaited a fate worse than any curse. At the very entrance to the capital, a new test awaited you, the first cutoff, which determined which of you would serve at the palace and which would go to the Janissary Corps, where your body would become an instrument of the emperor's will. You and the other boys were lined up in a stone courtyard like goods at a fair. The Sultan's servants, elegantly dressed, looked at you without sympathy. They unfolded parchments, checked lists, ordered you to open your mouth, checked your teeth like horses. They touched your skin, peered into your facial features, like artists looking for the perfect statue. They asked if you could write, read, count. If you were able to learn the language script. The most beautiful and intelligent were separated. You were destined to be among them. You were selected for the Enderun Palace School, located in the very heart of Topkapi, the Sultan's residence. The officials' gazes rested on your skin, as pure as ivory, on the clear gleam of your eyes, on the attentiveness with which you listened to orders. They smiled, not as friends, but as hunters who had seen good prey. You did not yet know then that there was no mercy in their smile, but only a premonition of future power over you. After that, your transformation began. You were stripped of the name given at baptism and given another name, Mesmet. You were ordered to forget your lineage, your past, your mother's songs, the cross she had placed in your palm. It was taken away the very next day. The prayers you whispered at night were forbidden. Your faith was disgraced, forever. The rite of conversion to the Padishah's faith was solemnly performed, as if you had chosen this path yourself. But you knew that there was no choice. And everyone around you knew. You repeated other people's words, not understanding, but in your heart you still held the memory of your mother's lullabies and your father's fairy tales, like an ember in the ashes. The Enderun School was called the Forge of Great Minds, the first school for the gifted in the whole world. But behind the brilliance of education, something else was hidden, the slow breaking of the soul, its assembly into pieces in a new form, convenient for the empire. You were taught languages, Arabic, Persian, Ottoman. You were taught arithmetic, stellar movement, lore, literature, playing the sagar, calligraphy. But each of the sciences required not only intelligence, but also submission. Everything you became was shaped by chains. The palace had many stone corridors, mirrored halls, secret doors, and dangers. You were settled in rooms that seemed to resemble a marble tomb, cold, lifeless. The beds were made of silk, but it seemed to you like ice. That first night you did not sleep. You listened to the other children sobbing softly, to the whispering of unfamiliar languages, to the footsteps of the older students and the caretakers walking between the beds like wolves among lambs. And even then, at the very beginning, you felt, there is no mercy behind the walls of this palace. There is only adaptation, or death. Your first lesson in the true rules of life beyond the palace walls was not given by a teacher, but by an older boy named Ahmet. He had the appearance of a quiet friend, a smile on his face, an emptiness in his eyes. He was respected, feared, obeyed, for he knew how to speak to his mentors in a way that made his word carry more weight than a guard's order. One evening, when the lights in the lamps had gone out, he sat on the edge of your bed. "You're new," he said quietly, with a soft smile. "You don't know how things work here yet. But I can help you. I can protect you. I can make your teachers proud of you." His hand fell on your shoulder, lightly, as if by accident. But your body tightened as if he had touched a blade. You were only a child. And you had never felt another's touch with so much intent. In exchange, he whispered, "You have to thank. There are ways, special ways that remain between us. Other boys thank you too. And they live better." Everything in you screamed. But you remained silent. Because you knew, refusal meant beatings, shame, loneliness. And consent meant the loss of the last thing that remained of your past, childhood integrity. In this citadel of beauty, knowledge, and order, there were no virtues except adaptation. The older boys, themselves once wronged, became the executioners of the new arrivals. Thus a ladder was born, at the bottom was the victim, at the top was the one who survived and became the predator. Eunuchs, servants castrated in childhood, whom life had already broken, now ruled the corridors with shining eyes, with the memory of their torments and the desire to repeat them on others. They understood better than anyone how this system worked, because they themselves were its flesh. Some of them could protect. But most reveled in the power over the body and fate of each new boy. The palace did not hide these relationships, on the contrary, they were woven into its structure. Handsome youths who fell into favor received better food, warmer beds, separate teachers, and a path to positions. But the price was the shadow that each carried behind their shoulders. Those who disobeyed became shadows. They were beaten. Humiliated. They disappeared. and were never spoken of again. You quickly realized, the palace is not a school, not a temple, not a prison. It is an organism that lives on fear, temptation, and silence. You learn to walk sideways in it, breathe quietly, not stand out, not draw attention to yourself. But even this strategy did not always save. Around you, the boys broke down in different ways. Dimitri, a boy from your region, had recently walked next to you and shared memories of meadows and well water. He learned to smile, the way his mentors wanted him to. He learned to whisper, flirt, please, not only with words. 6 months passed, and he already had new clothes, a better bed, generous meals, a separate teacher. His face shone. But his eyes were empty, like the winter sky over a faded field. He no longer spoke of home. And when new children arrived at the palace, he looked at them the way others had once looked at him, as if weighing which of them was suitable. The other, Stephanos, from a Greek fishing family, chose a different path. He remained silent. He did not respond to caresses. He did not thank for his guardianship. For this, he was beaten. He was humiliated. But he remained like a stone in a river, uncatchable, though hued. He did not run away, but he disappeared every day. He avoided looks. He ate in silence. He performed tasks as if out of duty, not desire. And with each day, with each beating, he became paler, more transparent. One morning, his bed remained empty. No one asked. His name was no longer heard. He became another ghost of these walls. You saw these two paths, and could not choose either one completely. You learned to give a part of yourself for survival. But deep in your chest you hid that spark that was called conscience. You tried to leave at least a part of yourself intact. But the palace was designed to prevent that. Here compromise was a myth. Every day was a new choice, either disgrace or death of the soul. And each time you lost another part of yourself. Sometimes, like shadows from another world, foreign envoys would come, nobles from Venice, France, Germany. They would enter the marble chambers of the palace with wide eyes, captivated by the decorations, the gold, the silks, the stained glass. They marveled at the organization, the beauty, the grandeur. But some of them, the most observant, saw something else. One Venetian ambassador wrote in his diaries that the palace's love for boys was excessive, and he remembered boys who walked around in silks and jewels like court ladies. Their movements were soft, their heads bowed, their eyes clouded, but their bodies seemed trained to please. Another, a French diplomat, did not mince words. In his letters, he wrote of the boys moving through the palace halls like birds of paradise in cages, adorned but frightened. How their eyes tremble when someone in power approaches. How the touches of older men are not of concern but of ownership. But even those who saw it were usually silent. For before them stood the image of an empire, orderly, strong, majestic. They saw the result, skilled officials, educated viziers, brilliant administrators. And how they became such, was left off the screen. The empire knew how to decorate a cage so that no one would ask about the chains. You saw the truth from the inside. You knew, this beauty was a mask, this sophistication was a smokescreen. You lived among marble, but slept in fear. You learned wisdom, but lost innocence. You spoke 3 languages, but could not voice pain. Everything was arranged so that silence became the only language of the soul.